My name is Rose, and I'm a 29-year-old female. I work days at a 24-hour pharmacy. Due to staffing shortages, I was asked to pick up some late evening shifts. It was only temporary, and I was happy to pick up the extra hours and make a little extra money. Most of the time, I got off work early enough to take the late bus home. But one night last week, I didn't get off until 1 a.m. I knew the buses wouldn't be running, and it would be dangerous for me to walk home alone. So instead, I called an Uber, which is something I often did when going out with friends. The car I was expecting was a silver Camry, and the driver had a good rating. The guy who picked me up was a man in his mid-40s with short blonde thinning hair and wireframe glasses. His face was pale, like he didn't get out much during the day, and spoke with a low, scratchy smoker's voice. He tried to talk to me a few times during the ride, but I wasn't in the mood for conversation. He eventually stopped speaking, but kept looking back at me in the mirror, which really creeped me out. But we made it to my place without incident, and he dropped me off in front of my apartment. As I was walking in, I looked back, and he was sitting in his car looking at his phone and holding it up as if he was trying to take a picture. When he noticed me looking at him, he put the phone down, smiled at me, and drove off. Over the next week, I started feeling like someone was watching me while I was at home. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in the back of an old apartment building on the first floor. My bedroom overlooks an alley that doesn't get much foot traffic, but recently I've been hearing some noises outside my window, like someone rummaging through trash cans. It didn't bother me at first. I thought it might be a homeless person, but one night I thought I saw someone trying to look through my window. Although I always keep the curtains closed, I could see through a small gap. When I walked over to the window, he disappeared. At this point, I was creeped out and thought I was being stalked, but I couldn't prove it. But I was afraid if I told anyone, they would think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself. One night after getting off work, again too late for a bus, I hailed an Uber and waited in front of the building. However, feeling paranoid, I entered an address that was a block away from my actual address, so the driver wouldn't know where I lived. Oddly, the same guy in the silver Camry got my fare and pulled up. This is the first time that I had seen the same driver, but it didn't seem that strange to me at the time. When I got into the car, the driver looked at me in the mirror and gave me a surprised look but didn't say anything. He eventually dropped me off in front of my place, and I was happy to be home. However, when I was lying in bed, I realized that I had entered a nearby address as my destination, but the driver had dropped me off in front of my actual place. Later that night, I woke up to a metallic scraping sound on my window, and I saw a dark shadow moving outside my curtains. It sounded like someone was trying to force my window, so I called 911 and locked myself in the bathroom. The operator told me to stay on the line with her until the police showed up. I was terrified. The scraping sound continued, until eventually I heard sirens. The police arrived within minutes and caught my would-be attacker in the act, who turned out to be the same creepy Uber driver. The event traumatized me, and I no longer feel safe living alone. My landlord was very understanding and was able to give me a unit on the 3rd floor, and I no longer work those late shifts. I don't know anything yet about the driver or his criminal record, but I often think about what could have happened had he gotten to me before I was able to call 911. I feel very lucky, but don't know if I will ever truly feel safe living alone. Hello, my name is Angela. It was a typical Friday night, and I had made plans with my friends to hit up a local club. We had been going there for months, and it was always a really good time. So I was excited to catch up with everyone and to let loose a little bit after a long work week. We arrived and started dancing and drinking pretty heavily right away. I have a patchy recollection of dancing with my friends and a few guys that I didn't know, but I didn't remember anything unusual happening there. I live a couple blocks from the club, so when the night was over, I was planning on walking home. I remember making my way to my house and starting to sober up as I approached my home. When I got there, I locked the door behind me, went to the kitchen to grab some water and a quick snack. I went upstairs to wash up, changed into my sweats, and got ready for bed. As I laid on my bed, my best friend texted me, asked me what happened with the guy who was bothering me at the club. I replied back, asking her what guy she was talking about. I was pretty drunk and didn't remember any specific guy. I was really tired by now and didn't really have an answer for her, so I just reassured her that I was home and everything was fine. We finished our conversation with good night, and I switched off my bedroom light. Shortly after falling asleep, I was awakened by some sounds coming from downstairs. I assumed it was my roommate coming home really late, even though she had planned on staying at her boyfriend's house that night. I heard the footsteps coming up the stairs and stopping outside my door. The door slowly opened. The area outside my room was also dark, so I couldn't make out the person standing in my doorway. I called out my roommate's name, but the door abruptly shut, and I didn't hear any footsteps leaving. I immediately messaged her, asking if it was her, but didn't get a response. I called out her name once more, and still nothing. At this point, I was totally freaked out and was too scared to go investigate. So I phoned 911 and asked for the police. Hearing the 911 operator for the first time made this feel even scarier somehow. As the room became illuminated, I spotted a man in the corner near the door, and I screamed while still conversing with the operator. The man then dashed out of my bedroom, and I heard him run down the stairs and out the front door. The operator remained with me on the line and guided me until the officers arrived. Although the lighting in my room wasn't that great and it happened so quickly, I was able to describe the man. He was around 25 to 30 years old, tall and thin, and wearing a dark baseball cap. One of the cops held up a key that he found on the floor near the doorway. It was the key that I kept under a loose brick outside the front door. The man used it to enter our house. Based on the description, my friends told me that it could have been the guy from the club. He may have followed me and seen me put the key back in the hiding spot when I got home. The experience was frightening. It taught me the importance of being vigilant and taking precautions to ensure my safety, particularly when out drinking with friends. From now on, I make sure not to leave my beverage unattended and to always have a friend accompany me when walking home late at night, and we no longer leave a spare key hidden outside our home. It was a stunning sunset over the rugged hills of Nevada, and me and my fiancée were cruising down a long, empty stretch of road. It had been a long day of driving from northern Cal, and we were headed toward our destination in New Mexico via a stop in Las Vegas. The lack of cell service had been bothering us, but we didn't expect anything to go wrong. I was laid down almost flat in my seat taking a nap when suddenly my fiancée, who was driving at the time, let out a gasp. I asked her what was wrong, groggily coming out of a solid sleep. She pointed to the rearview mirror and said there was a dark pickup truck following us closely. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just someone in a hurry, and laid back down. But the truck stayed behind us for a while, and my fiancée grew increasingly worried. We were in the middle of nowhere, with no other cars in sight, and the sun had just disappeared behind the mountains. It was pitch black outside. My fiancée decided to pick up the pace, hoping to shake off the truck, but it didn't work. The truck kept tailing us, and my fiancée's unease turned into outright fear. By now, I was fully awake and feeling alarmed myself. Just as we reached the end of a long straightaway, the truck suddenly overtook us and pulled in front. My fiancée hit the brakes and we came to a stop. The truck stopped also, and a burly man with a thick beard got out. He walked slowly towards us, and he had both his hands awkwardly placed in his pockets. I quickly rolled down the window and tried to de-escalate the situation, but he had no interest in listening. He kept coming closer, and I could feel my heart racing. That's when I remembered the can of pepper spray I kept in the glove compartment. I grabbed it and sprayed the man in the face, hoping to deter him. The man stumbled back, his eyes watering, and got back into his truck. We breathed a sigh of relief as we watched him drive away. We pulled into the next gas station where we called the police and reported the incident. It turned out that the man was a wanted criminal who had been on the run for months. The cop told us that he may have initially believed my fiancée to be alone in the car and targeted her, perhaps to swap out his vehicle to fool authorities, or possibly for something worse. We are lucky to have escaped unharmed, and we made a mental note to never take any chances while driving through remote areas. From that day on, we always made sure to carry pepper spray and other self-defense tools in our car, just in case.